I'm Nintendo.
And I'm Sega.
This is Console Wars!
Wait!
Why should I? As far as I'm concerned, you ain't never gonna see none of this inheritance, not once your secret gets out. What are you waiting for, Edward? You know what you need to do. There's more than one way to get your hands dirty. Yeah. Man, these Cheetos commercials are getting really intense.
I'll say. I mean, what were you thinking, Chester Cheetah?
You didn't like it?
It definitely doesn't make me want to buy Cheetos.
Darn it! Cheeto sales are at an all-time low. Top brass said it would give me more appeal with millennials. Junk food mascots don't work anymore. Millennials are way too health conscious for that.
I'll say, if I need my Cheetos fix, I'll just tell myself it's a good old vegan cheese puffs.
Dairy-free? I feel like a better person already.
Plus, they're good for the animals.
And the environment. I can't believe this is the world I'm living in.
Trying to reach people through edgy commercials isn't gonna work. I mean, who even watches TV anymore?
Seriously. Now that we watched a commercial, can we finally play the Resident Evil 2 remake? Fine, go ahead. Wait a minute. That's it! That's how I'll reach you people, by releasing a remake of my first video game, Chester Cheetah Too Cool to Fool. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, that game's bad.
That doesn't matter. People will buy it. People always buy remakes.
Good luck. People don't just buy remakes. Now, where's that Resident Evil 2 remake?
I think it's under DuckTales Remastered.
Is it? No, darn. It's the remake of Dragon Quest IV for DS. Oh wait, is that it? Underneath the Metal Gear Solid remake?
Oh, you mean the Twin Snakes? Nah, that's just Mega Man, powered up.
Darn. Oh wait, here it is. Found it. It was underneath the remake of the original Resident Evil.
Classic. Right. People don't just buy remakes.
Remakes of good games sell, not your awful game.
Do we have to show you how bad that game really is?
Too Cool to Fool is an awful game for Sega Genesis.
Right, but it's worse for the Super Nintendo.
What? That's it! Are we doing this?
Bring it on! Worst Chester Cheetah, Too Cool to Fool.
Chester Cheetah Too Cool to Fool is a side-scrolling platformer. It's one of two games to star Cheetos mascot Chester Cheetah, the other game being Wild Wild Quest. Too Cool to Fool was released by Kaneko only in North America.
These games are bad. Even the instruction manual's bad with broken English on many pages. Climb the vine, the control pad up. Swing from vine to vine and grab the sunglasses. Ooh. The game was released for Super Nintendo in 1992 and Sega Genesis in 1993. Even though both games are similar, there's lots of differences. Which game is worse? Let's find out.
These games look the same.
Yeah, similar characters and levels.
These games have the same looking characters. Since Chester is an animal, so are most of the enemies. They look pretty generic. Or do they? To be cool like Chester, most of these enemies are wearing sunglasses. You got sunglasses on turtles, fish, flying squirrels. This spring that is alive is wearing sunglasses. Even the blind bat wears sunglasses. Also, they made all the animals that walk on two legs wear pants. This is pretty funny, because Chester doesn't. He's too cool to fool and too cool for pants as well. He's allowed to let it all hang out.
The designs of the levels are a park, the jungle, swamp, cave, sky, and city for bonus levels. Pretty straightforward designs, nothing too memorable here. They would be identical in both games except some colors are swapped. The games also have the same stiff character animations. You can see this when you're walking, jumping, or climbing. Character animations of enemies are choppy too. To be fair, this is a game based off a junk food mascot, so greatness shouldn't be expected. Both games do have a crawl animation that can be described as sensual?
What? That's how all cheetahs crawl. I swear.
Not the best looking games, but mine's definitely worse. Sega game is missing character animations.
Whenever you get hit on Super Nintendo, Chester does a little animation. He doesn't do anything on Sega. On Super Nintendo, whenever you fall in the sewer, you get another animation. Again, you get nothing on Sega.
Your game definitely looks better. Plus, you have Mode 7.
Actually, your game has Mode 7, or something pretty close to it.
Sure, Super Nintendo has Mode 7, but the Genesis game imitates it pretty well. It's definitely some of the best Mode 7 looking graphics I've seen on Sega.
Are you sure? Check out the endings. Do I even need to tell you which one's the Sega?
And there are plenty of other reasons why my game looks worse.
This stage on Super Nintendo, you see the water moving near the shoreline. It doesn't move at all on Sega. And check out the sky. On Sega, it's just one color. On Super Nintendo, it's many colors, giving you a nice sunset effect. That happens to the sky on this level too. Then you have these birds. See how their mouths move on Super Nintendo? They don't move at all on Sega. Speaking of birds, you got these birds wearing sunglasses in Super Nintendo. They are completely missing in the Sega game.
Those are all minor details.
Well, there's major differences too.
Both games have you wear sunglasses to see more power-ups. On Super Nintendo, when you put them on, the screen dims, just like sunglasses in real life. And when you put them on Sega, it goes gray. And check out this Super Nintendo level in a cave. You light a match and you get this cool vignette effect. It creates a sense of danger. And how does it look on Sega? No vignette or any effect at all. Then in that same level you have minecarts. On Sega it looks okay, I guess. Nothing really special. But on Super Nintendo it looks really cool. See how the track flips every time you take a turn? This shifting level looks seamless and smooth.
It's close, but my graphics are definitely worse.
With missing details, missing animations, no dim effect, no vignette effect, and no cool shifting track, worst graphics go to Sega Genesis.
Presentations are very different.
The only presentation our games have in common is similar looking endings, and even those aren't exactly the same. Everything else is completely different. Different intros, different title screens, different title cards between levels, different stage cleared screens, and even our HUDs have differences.
Yeah, but your presentation's better.
Let's look at the intro again. The intro on Sega starts with a bang, then it continues with a fully animated sequence. It's definitely cooler than mine, which just has a lazy spotlight.
That's not lazy, it's funny. First I'm standing and then boom! I'm in a bath. Wow! I'm such a crazy cheetah. No, that's still pretty lazy.
Well, the Super Nintendo title screen is still better than mine.
In Sega, it's just a picture, nothing special. On Super Nintendo, first you see some sweet Mode 7. Then you'll notice Chester point to game start and options with his tail. And once you decide, he does a cool snap.
No, my presentation's worse. Let's look at the title cards.
On Sega, you have a cool picture before every level. What's it look like on the SNES? No picture, just words. So many words. Why not just have a picture?
What? How dare you disrespect my beautiful poetry? Beautiful poetry? Have you actually read that?
Yo, friend, it's time to split this den with Mean Eugene on the scene. And this one is incomplete. Swing from vine to vine and grab the sunglasses this. This what? Day, year, month? What is it?
See? It's bad. It's not even complete.
I'm missing text too, in the ending.
Check out this last line on Super Nintendo. Like, this adventure has only one equal. Look for me in Hip City, USA, the sequel. So not only does it rhyme, but it also hints at a sequel. Now let's check that out on Sega. Like, this adventure has only one equal. Look for me in Hip City... What? That's it? No rhyme? No mention of a sequel? How could they leave you hanging like that? Also, in addition to pictures and text, you have in-game Chester doing his thing. He doesn't do that in Sega.
One more thing about the endings.
Check out this line on Sega. My bike is ready to rip a ride on the wild side. Sounds cool. Let's check out the Super Nintendo. My bike is ready to trip a ride on the wild side. Trip? That's not cool. That's not cool at all.
Well, you know what's worse? My HUD.
Both HUDs look similar. They both have the life bar and number of medals you've collected, but the Super Nintendo has more. The Super Nintendo has a spot for items you've collected during the level. Sega doesn't. Did I get the sneakers and skateboard on Sega? I guess I'll never know. Also absent on Sega is the score. And there is a score tally at the end of every level, so where's my score during gameplay?
Well, my game's missing something too.
When you pause in Sega, the screen says, pause. No surprise there. And when you pause on Super Nintendo, it just dims. No pause at all, just lazy.
I'll take lazy over confusing like in my game. Talking about when you die.
When you die on Super Nintendo, you see Chester as an angel, and then are immediately taken to a continue screen. Pretty standard stuff. On Sega, you see Angel Chester, and it says game over. Why? It's not game over. You're immediately taken to the continue screen. Why does it say game over if it isn't? Also, my continue screen is timed. Super Nintendo isn't.
Yours is much better.
Nah, mine's still pretty bad.
Well, mine's pretty bad too. Does this mean
Tie?
Since both games made questionable choices,
But nothing really makes either stand out,
worst presentation?
is a tie.
Both games have the same soundtrack.
right? But mine's worse.
Nah, mine's worse.
Some songs are faster on Sega.
And some songs are faster on Super Nintendo.
Some songs have better quality on Sega.
And some songs are better quality on Super Nintendo.
Oh, come on, the music's not that bad.
It's actually not a terrible soundtrack.
It got stuck in my head a few times.
Well, this is going nowhere.
Is it? Because you actually have one more song than I do.
On Sega, when you fight the final boss, you get the boss theme. On Super Nintendo, there is no boss theme. It just uses the level's music.
My game plays less music, too.
On the Super Nintendo title screen, there's no music, just dead silence. It's just you and your thoughts going, should I really be playing this game? The Sega game, however, has a song for the title screen. It continues from the intro, but at least there's music. You know where the Super Nintendo does have music? Pausing. When you pause on Super Nintendo, music just keeps playing full blast. When you pause on Sega, the music pauses.
For the poor handling of the music, my sound is worse.
Whoa, we're not done yet. Let's talk about those sound effects.
Mine are definitely worse. The Sega game has so many questionable sound effects. Here's jumping on Super Nintendo. Yeah, that sounds like jumping. And here it is on Sega. Sounds like sonar on a submarine. Here's when you get hit on Super Nintendo. Sure, it's cheesy, but that definitely sounds like Chester. Here's when you get hit on Sega. What was that? Sounds like an outtake from The Exorcist.
I'm still mad I didn't get that part. Bad sound effects is one thing, but my game's just missing sound effects.
Super Nintendo doesn't have a sound effect when these logs sync. They make a noise on Sega. And when you crawl on the Super Nintendo, there's no sound. There's a sound on Sega.
That crawl sound effect is awful. Be thankful you don't have that high screech every time you crawl, which you do a lot in the first level.
And besides, my game's missing sound effects too.
On Sega, you don't hear this cannon being fired. You hear it on Super Nintendo. And this dog riding a bird. You hear it making noises on Super Nintendo. Silent on Sega. And the boss of the game. You hear his helicopter on Super Nintendo. You don't hear it in Sega.
I might have one more song, but my terrible sound effects definitely put my game over the top.
Both games have similar tunes, but with a lot more terrible sound effects. Worst sound goes to Sega Genesis.
Both these games have the same terrible gameplay.
Oh yeah.
Both games are side-scrolling platformers. You have one button to jump and one to dash. You can only dash once you get the sneakers power-up, something you annoyingly have to do in every level. And you want this power-up right away, because you walk very slow. Your only attack here is jumping on enemies. There are also medals spread throughout the level that give you 1-up if you collect 100, which pretty much never happens because you'd have to tediously get every single one.
Another power-up you can get is the sunglasses. They let you see hidden medals or health. You can also get a skateboard, which lets you play in the bonus stage, and you get this guitar, which makes you invincible and kill any enemy you touch.
The object of the game is to find the parts of your motorcycle scattered in each level. Once you find the part, you're allowed to exit. These games are short too, with only 5 levels and 3 boss fights. There's a little variety with the boat, minecart, and flying, but it's not much. And no checkpoints in any level. So wherever you die, even if it's at the boss, you have to start from the beginning of the stage. What a pain.
This is not a fun game.
These controls are terrible.
Chester moves incredibly slow. Sure, you have the shoes, but you'll most likely run into something, so you don't always use them. Jumping is awful too. It's incredibly floaty and difficult to hit your target. Platforming is a big part of this game and it plays so poorly. You also have one level with swinging vines and these controls are terrible too. These poor controls really up the frustration level.
Bottom line, the controls are poor, the enemies are boring, level design is mediocre, and the variety is lacking. Overall, not a satisfying game to play.
So many problems with this game, but where to start?
How about that awful guitar? Seems cool to me. Now I know you're joshing me. Are you joshing me? You're joshing me. It's really not that good.
Once you get the power up, you have no control. Chester just goes back and forth, rocking out like an idiot. And it only kills the enemies that are in proximity of the power up, so not many enemies. It would be great if you could save it and use it for later, but you can't. You mostly use it when there are no enemies. You end up trying to avoid it just so you don't waste time.
That guitar is definitely worse on Sega.
The pointless guitar invincibility lasts a lot longer on Sega. It's almost 3 times as long. Oh, that's brutal.
Oh, Super Nintendo's guitar is definitely worse.
Sure, the guitar lasts longer on Sega, but there's more of them on Super Nintendo, and you're pretty much guaranteed to hit each one. Take this one on the water stage. You can't avoid it. You'll dance, and you'll fall into the water and lose life. Can't jump over it. Can't duck under it. It's impossible to avoid. It makes you lose life. Why? You can easily duck under the Sega one.
So, my game has something that's completely pointless.
On the first stage, for no reason at all, you can go left. and it goes on for a while. Why? There's nothing there. It's a waste of time. Super Nintendo doesn't have that. You know why? Because going left is completely pointless.
My game wastes way more time. Let's go back to those character animations. Remember those extra character animations my game has? They might look nice, but they just waste your time. I can't just go into the sewer in my game. I have to wait for Chester's head to catch up with his body every time. It's so nice in the Sega game, it just lets you go in the sewer. And this animation when you get hit, I can't move right away because I need to see Chester shake his head every time. It can really add up and test your patience. The Sega spares you with these animations and just lets you play.
I still think it's cool to look at. And the Sega game made some poor choices.
For some reason on Sega, you can't jump up a rope if you're already holding up on the D-pad. You have to take your thumb off the D-pad in order to jump. Why? You're climbing up. You're going to be pressing up. The Super Nintendo lets you jump if you hold up. And then there's the first level. In both games, you go into the sewer multiple times. On Super Nintendo, you need to press down to go in. Makes sense. On Sega, you just fall down. No matter what. Meant to go left? Nah, just fall down. Meant to go right? Nah, just fall down. Meant to fight an enemy? Nah, just fall down. It can waste so much time.
Yeah, but mine's worse because it's so much slower.
First off, look how slow you climb on Super Nintendo, especially compared to the Sega game. And yeah, you can jump, but not at the very top. You have to climb there and be reminded how bad it is. And look how floaty the controls are on the butterfly. It's a little hard to control. On Sega, it's a lot tighter and not as floaty. Plus, the Super Nintendo game has more slowdown. A lot more.
That's nothing. My game's still worse. My game is much harder.
The Sega game is much harder than the Super Nintendo game. For one thing, enemies never drop health on Sega. Ever. That's not fair, because they drop health in Super Nintendo. Enemies also constantly respawn on Sega, making it hard to explore. You know how often they respawn on Super Nintendo? Never. Enemies don't respawn on Super Nintendo. That's not fair. Makes it so much easier to explore. Also on Sega, not all enemies die. A lot of them just get knocked unconscious for a few seconds before they're back up and attacking you. The Super Nintendo game actually lets you kill a lot of these enemies. And some of them even kill themselves. That's not fair. And these tiny bats on Sega, they can hurt you. On Super Nintendo, they can't hurt you. That's not fair at all. The Super Nintendo game is so much easier.
And the bosses are much harder on Sega too.
Check out this boat fight on Sega. The boss throws cannonballs at you. The hit detection is ridiculous. How did that hit me? How? He should only hit you with the shadow part, not when it's already over me and just hitting me at the very end. The perspective is all wrong. And how hard is he on Super Nintendo? Wow, you gotta be kidding me. And this train boss, look how crazy he is on Sega. I can't get an opening. So many projectiles. So hard to jump on him. And on Super Nintendo, he's slow and only throws 3 rocks at a time. And the rocks don't hurt you if you duck. I want that! The boss of the game is incredibly hard on Sega too. It's so hard to hurt him without getting hit. It's a lot easier to hit him on Super Nintendo. It's so much more frustrating on Sega. This game is based on a junk food mascot. It shouldn't be this hard.
There's no denying it. My gameplay is worse.
For having longer guitar solos, pointless level design, poor game mechanics, and being overly difficult and frustrating, worst gameplay goes to Sega Genesis.
Both games are bad, but one is worse. And that game is Chester Cheetah Too Cool to Fool for the Sega Genesis.
It has worse graphics with missing details, missing animations, no dim effect, no vignette effect, and no cool shifting track. It has bad presentation with a boring title screen, incomplete HUD, no story, and an incomplete, non-rhyming ending. The soundtracks are similar, but it definitely has worse sound with terrible sound effects. And it has worse gameplay, with longer guitar solos, pointless level design, poor game mechanics, and being overly difficult and frustrating. Not to say that the Super Nintendo game is good, both of these games are bad. But if you had to play one, you might as well play the one that looks and sounds better and is more fair with the gameplay. Worst Chester Cheetah Too Cool to Fool goes to Sega Genesis.
Oh, you boys were right. This game is awful.
You see?
A remake would be a terrible idea.
Thank you.
You've both inspired me. I don't need a video game remake. I need a fresh, original idea with amazing gameplay. That'll put me back on top.
Atta boy, Chester.
Make us proud. Oh no!
So, what do you guys think?
I can't believe after all that talk about originality, all you did was make a blatant ripoff of Resident Evil 2.
No idea what you're talking about.
Resident Cheetah.
Oh, so I take it you don't want your turn then?
No, of course I do. Gimme.
No, you got Cheetos all over your fingers. You're ruining the controller.
There's more than one way to get your hands dirty.
Thanks for checking out our latest video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to DaGameNerd for his donation of both Chester Cheetah games. And thanks to anyone else who requested them. And keep those suggestions coming. We will get to them. Also, check us out on Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Console Wars goodness. Later.
Wait. Why should I? As far as I'm concerned, you and... Nope.